Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today I actually wasn't planning on filming anything really. I've been trying to get a chance to play Batman Returns, but the in-laws have arrived and they've slightly taken over the room where I keep my Mega Drive. But maybe it'll come sometime between Christmas and New Year. We shall see. But in the meantime, actually, while I was preparing for the in-laws, I was decorating. I was tidying the room, and actually, I'm decorating. I'm putting up some tinsel as well. You know, got to make the rooms feel Christmassy. When I came across this, a classic from my childhood, and the N64 Magazine Christmas edition from the year 2000. This is issue 49. Now, what struck me about this, and this is the reason why I'm making this, is the way in which they talk about Majora's Mask. It's called Zelda 2. Now, this is despite the fact that that by now people knew that it was going to be called Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. In fact, there's an article in here about the, hang on if I can just find it, about the marketing of Majora's Mask. Here you go. So Planet 64 news desk and Majora's Mask marketing. And what's really cool in here is that it says here, as we mentioned last month, the publicity began with two hoax websites. The first, Z Science, the homepage of an organisation called JRAMOA, obviously an anagram of Majora, and this purported to have found evidence that the moon was steaming towards Earth. Via an online DNA test, it chose 17-year-old Bryce Wilson to save the world by the odd method of playing through the end of Majora's Mask. Meanwhile, the Radio Zelda website kept track of Wilson's progress and counted down to Z-Day on October 26th, which just happened to be the game's US release date. Sadly, I don't know. I'm not sure you could get away with that sort of these days, saying the moon's going to crash into the Earth. Yeah, maybe you could, but I couldn't find the website online. I'll have to check again later on today. But it just got me, I suppose, thinking about actually that time in my life and the fact that, yeah, Majora's Mask was a great big unknown, and it was also something to be quite nervous about. So they had this sort of great big, like, four spread coverage of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, going into sort of the enhanced graphics, the way in which the timelines play out over the course of the 3 days that you have to save the land of Termina from the moon, and of course you got your mask salesman with the Mario mask on the back there, quite cool. And overall, the Nintendo Magazine gave it a score of 96%, which I suppose they were bound to in the end, weren't they? And so, in that sense, I didn't really buy this magazine because it was unbiased. I bought it because it had access to all things Nintendo. It's not the official Nintendo magazine, but they definitely had a lot more access than, for example, Games Master on its own, this kind of thing. Now, I remember, I say, being very excited about Zelda, but we didn't get our hands on the game until well into 2001, maybe even 2002, actually, come to think of it. Again, we didn't have that much money growing up, but then again, lots of people didn't. Yeah, this was from a time when you couldn't just go out and buy the latest game whenever you wanted to, and you only had a few games at a time. These days, I don't think, especially kids, don't fully understand what it was like in the in the 80s, 90s, and even the very early 2000s, God forbid. But something which I do remember and which really got me smiling from this magazine was their coverage of The World Is Not Enough. Now, this is a game that I think I've mentioned in my N64 collection video. Surely to goodness, I must have mentioned how it's a bit of an understated gem, but it is. This is essentially it's not a follow-up to GoldenEye. It couldn't be because it's made by different people, but it had all of the I suppose all the expectation heaped on it because of GoldenEye. And in this particular article, they say here, Eurocom have reached into Rare's Epic, ripped out its guts and tucked them in to the World Is Not Enough's belly. The end score that they give it is 88%, which again, you know, it was never quite going to live up to GoldenEye, but it is good. It's got some interesting, certainly some interesting quirks in terms of the use of, say, night vision, the use of certain gadgets, the portrayal early on in the game of a London tube station is something which I really found very interesting. Given that I'm from Britain, it was so weird seeing a British setting in a computer game. You know, I mean, yes, okay, you had. Oh, what's it called? Is it The Getaway or something? The Black Monday. I'll put it on the screen. Yes, okay, that was explicitly a London-based game that I remember coming out, but it wasn't common. Something else that's not common as well. Here we have a purple N64, which, oh god, would I kill for that these days? I'd take the shine off it. A purple N64. Oh, I would do anything to have that. And a whole host of third-party controllers, memory cards, all sorts of things which now I've got a couple of these up in my drawer upstairs, and well, they're rubbish. They haven't lasted. They didn't last very long back then, and they certainly haven't stood the test of time. Now, my brother-in-law is coming over this Christmas, and you may recall he very kindly let me have pretty much ownership, or certainly long-term custodianship, over his SNES. But we actually gave him in return a Game Boy carry case that I had with me here last Christmas, and also actually I'm going to be getting him some Game Boy related stuff. Game Boy related stuff this Christmas, and one of those things actually will be the magnifying glass with the lights on the side. I think they have a version of it here in the magazine. If I can find it, hang on. Yeah, so there you go. The light magnifiers for the old Game Boy there. I'm going to get him one of those because obviously the original Game Boy wasn't backlit. Which now, when you go back to it, you wonder how we ever lived without backlit screens and slightly bigger screens as well. But you know, I certainly remember when I first got a Game Boy, I was far too excited to be playing, especially, for example, Link's Awakening. We have also here a little preview of Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. This is a game which I really want to play. Again, in my private life or in my work life, I'm an archaeologist. I also just love Indiana Jones. I'd love to give this a go, although it doesn't look too good. I mean, in here they're talking about how the C buttons handle items, weaponry, a la Zelda. The Z targeting is also reminiscent of Miyamoto's masterpiece. But essentially they're saying that it might not be enough to clean up the blocky controls of essentially a ported PC game. I guess we'll see if I ever get hold of a copy of the game. We have here Pokemon Stadium Gold and Silver on Game Boy. Interesting. If you play the original, and this will be familiar stuff, the control system's exactly the same, and looks-wise, apart from a pile of new ripple, glow, and shockwave effects, there's not much difference. Interesting. I say interesting because this morning, while I was doing some Christmas shopping, I came across Pokemon Colosseum on Colosseum, as opposed to Stadium, sorry, on the GameCube, and that sort of got me thinking about Pokemon Go and the fact that well, I haven't played it for a couple of weeks. Although my wife has. Apparently she caught a Ditto the other day. That's quite exciting. Also, speaking of Nintendo apps, Super Mario Run. I didn't think it would be very good, but I'm really enjoying it. It has taken the essence of a Mario level and put it onto a portrait format phone screen. Weird. It's just I really didn't expect to enjoy it, but I am. But anyway, so yeah, so it's like rambling there. Oh, also look at this. This is the Japanese box and advertising for Perfect Dark. Isn't that quite cool? It's very grown up. It's very dark, actually. Yeah. Well, as I said, this Japanese Perfect Dark artwork looks more suited to an obscure art house movie. Well, I suppose it does look a bit sort of, possibly a bit racy. Hey You Pikachu. I think this is one of the games which required a microphone, is it, for for the N64. So yeah, all in all, I mean, the year 2000 was a good year for certainly for being in that world. You know, not necessarily having all the games, but certainly reading about them and thinking about them. There was apparently a terrible Batman game released. Oh yes, of course, it was Batman. Was it Batman of the Future? Hang on. Yep, there you go. 16% they gave it, and I have played this. When I worked at Blockbuster, I sort of rented it for free, basically. 16%. Batman of the Future: Return of the Joker. Kapow boff game rubbish. What's this say here? After discovering the technique of using the defensive suit's special attack in conjunction with blocking and fighting, the fight against the final Joker was over in a good 15 seconds. Positively dreadful and proof of what a deeply pitiful game this is. Don't waste your money. Oh, blimey. So yeah, there were some stinkers, and also look at this. Sorry, I'm just. There's no plan in this video. There's no plan. All these things where you can phone in to win a prize. Thankfully, I was never daft enough to actually try this, because obviously it's just a money grab, isn't it? Was it win rock goodies? Win PlayStation 2? Win a mobile phone? Win a folding scooter? That's still a fairly current prize today, isn't it? Really? Digimon, remember those? Wrestling T-shirts, wrestling tickets. Win a DVD player. Oh, win the new PS1 with the travel screen, N64, £150 of games. Wouldn't mind that. Win an MP3 player. Yeah, yeah. The year 2000, lovely, very fond memories of that. And also, this was sort of just before I started, you know, working at Blockbuster. This was about a year or two before. So I was you know, deep in my passion for games and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't yet in that sort of golden age of being able to just dip in at work whenever I wanted. Also, look at these Nintendo Mini Classics, kind of I suppose like reissued Game & Watches. They look quite interesting. Zelda and a Donkey Kong version. Wonder how much they're worth now. They're $7.99 to $9.99 apparently at the time. Interesting. But yeah, as I said, I just thought it was worthwhile to sort of having a look at this and just reflecting on the fact that yeah, people even on the cover of N64 Magazine, they felt the need to say Zelda 2, because essentially they were marketing it, or they were assuming that you would be wanting to buy it on the strength of its predecessor. This is Zelda 2, you know, the sequel, as opposed to you know, some new Zelda game that you might be risking your money on. Oh, and Dr. Kit's Game Clinic. Oh, I remember this. The Game Clinic was basically a write-in where people could sort of send in their problems. So let's see. Dr. Kicks, I can't beat Mizar at the end of Jet Force Gemini. I've been trying to kill him for ages now, and it's really starting to do my head in. Mark Thornley, York. Dr. Kitts emerged red-faced from his lab with a mouthful of sushi, and then sort of gives the advice. Okay, I can't complete Boonta Eve Classic on Star Wars Episode 1 Risa. I don't crash, and I always get a boost start, but Sebulba always overtakes me. Please help. Jonathan Lipscomb, Woking. Dr. Kitts charges round the corner, dragging 2 turbines behind him. Ah, young Padawan, follow my tuition and you shall be victorious. First, some basics. Never move on to the next stage unless you've won the race. That way you can have the best parts of the pods available by the time you reach Boonta, making it much easier. That makes sense, yeah. Actually, you know, play the game and upgrade. When you reach the Tuscan territory where the road breaks up, keep to the right. It's rare that they shoot your pod here. Ah, okay. Finally, always use your boost on the straights. If you built up your pod correctly, this shouldn't be a problem. So essentially what he's saying is, go and play the game properly. Yeah. Some of this stuff, sometimes he was a little bit cynical, a little bit snarky, shall we say, in his responses. But those were, yeah, that was the time. And I know, you know, some people, some slightly older gamers than me, especially in the US, they have, for example, you know, Nintendo Power and all this kind of thing. But for me, when I was growing up and when I was you know, certainly into my teens and I could afford to buy myself magazines, it was the N64 and then eventually the GCN magazine, which were the ones which I was getting most often, with some, you know, Sega Saturn magazines here and there. Here's another one that's kind of intriguing. Tom and Jerry Fists of Furry, 35%. I'm not surprised it didn't get a huge amount in terms of the verdict. The verdict: another top-notch license let down by lazy and cack-handed execution. Avoid. You could rely on these guys to not mince their words. That's for sure. And there they are, the editing team on the front, all sort of, you know, all being a bit Christmassy in their sleighs. Aww. Well, guys, completely unplanned episode, but I got this out and I couldn't resist sharing a little bit of it with you. In particular, I just love the fact that I love seeing how these sort of things develop over time and how they developed. Like I say, the marketing of Majora's Mask, the fact that, you know, you had, was it the GameCube was called Project Dolphin, I seem to recall. You know, and is it Project Cafe or something was the Wii. You had all these rumours, you know, circulating in these sort of magazines, and you felt as though you were part of a community, and you were part of a community. I suppose this was the community that I relied on before I could go on YouTube, and before I could, you know, hear the opinions of other people like me. I had to read the opinions of people kind of like me in the form of a magazine. WF No Mercy. I remember that. Oh, I think we've got that one actually. So I think we've still got it upstairs. Yes, very good game. 92% on the verdict there. Yes. Sorry, I'm sorry. That's enough. Yes, honestly, it's been a pleasure digging back into this. Free sweets. The sweets are gone though. Sweets are long gone. It's been a pleasure digging back into this, and hopefully this hasn't been too random for you guys. There will be a Christmas special video coming on Christmas Eve, but until then, whatever you're doing in the run up to Christmas, hopefully you're having a relaxing time. Do take care. Bye bye.